Good evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's public planning meeting. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting will be live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the Agendas, Meetings, and Minutes page of the city's website. This meeting is for information and discussion purposes only, and no decision will be made this evening. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held this Thursday. If you wish to address council at that meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. on Tuesday. A delegation form is available on the city website. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. If an application is approved, only the applicant, the minister, or a person who made written submissions or oral submissions at this meeting may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items that are on tonight's agenda? Mr. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to declare a possible perceived conflict with the first application, SB 24-02-08 and ZN 8-24-03, as I own property in proximity to that application.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone else? Seeing none. Okay, we will get started. So the first one is SB 24-02-08 and ZN 8-24-03, applications for draft plan of subdivision and zone change, City of Woodstock 685761, Highway 2 and 775019, Blanford Road. And the planner, Mr. Gilbert, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a industrial plan of subdivision and zone change affecting lands on the north side of Highway 2, west side of Blanford Road, south side of Township Road 2, and abutting the eastern limits of Highway 401 in the city of Woodstock. The plan of subdivision consists of 9 blocks for industrial development, 3 natural heritage blocks, which include woodlands and wetlands, 1 block for stormwater management, 1 block for a future sanitary pumping station, and a number of blocks for road widenings and 1 foot reserves served by 5 new local streets. The access to the proposed, or the access for the subdivision plan will be, there's 3 access points to surrounding roads. There's a access point, a roundabout, proposed roundabout on Highway 2, opposite Oxford Road 55. There's a second entrance to Highway 2 to the east, as well as an entrance to Blanford Road. There's provision for future road connections through the abutting parcel to the west, both at the end of the upper street by Highway 401 and the main east-west street in the plan of subdivision. The proposed zone change would rezone the property from agricultural and rental protection to a special prestige industrial, a special general industrial zone, future development zone, and a special environmental protection zone 1 and 2. The subject property is approximately 135 hectares or 353 acres. The portion of the lands for industrial purposes is approximately 29.8 hectares, And as noted, the balance of the lands makes up the natural heritage features and the road widening blocks. Access or servicing is proposed to come uh, through or under Highway 401 to the west through the abutting parcel here to these lands, which should be obtained through negotiation and through a future plan of subdivision for that abutting parcel. The lands are designated business park and traditional industrial, as well as future urban growth and environmental protection. These lands were both part of the East Woodstock Secondary Plan back in 2007 and the Southeast Woodstock Secondary Plan, which was approved in April of 2022. Further to the detailed plans prepared through the secondary plan, a number of studies have been prepared for these applications, including environmental impact study, a stormwater management report, a wastewater servicing report, a water servicing report, planning and servicing study, planning justification report, a traffic impact study, a geotechnical report, a hydrogeological assessment, and archaeological assessments. The portion closest to the 401, that portion of the property is designated business park, and that's proposed to be zoned to a special M1 zone, which would provide for uh, lighter industrial uses. And the remainder of the site, this main area is designated traditional industrial, and that'd be zoned to the traditional industrial zone, the general industrial zone M3, which will allow for some greater and higher intensity industrial uses. Through the circulation of the applications, at this time, no comments been received from MTO. However, staff are satisfied that MTO has been adequately involved in the process through both the pre-consultation of the development as well as through the two approved secondary plans for this area, and no access to MTO permit-controlled highways is proposed through this plan. And this subdivision plan does follow all of the preferred road alignments of the Southeast Woodstock secondary plan. As well, we are awaiting comments from the GRCA. However, their comments are related to the natural hazard portion of the site. The county has obtained their own our own peer review consultant to review the EIS for natural heritage features. Those comments are forthcoming, and there are adequate or there are appropriate conditions of approval to ensure that those reports are finalized and all the recommendations are carried out. With respect to the zoning, the setback to the environmental areas is recommended to be 30 meters. We propose that this be included in the zoning bylaw. If a development proponent wants to go less than that, they'd have to provide their own environmental impact study to demonstrate that there's no negative impacts from that reduced setback. The only part of the development that encroaches into that setback is this road alignment between the two natural heritage features. And the EIS did provide mitigation strategies and recommendations to minimize the impact to the natural heritage features in that area. It's also proposed that the city use holding provisions for the industrial lands to ensure that the proposed industrial uses are compliant with the Ministry of Environment's NPC 300 noise guideline. It's really hard to assess the impact of noise when the industrial end user, the building layout, and the use is not known. So it's proposed that the holding provision would be removed by the city once we've received detailed noise studies that demonstrate compliance with surrounding negative or surrounding sensitive land uses. There are some functional considerations that's been included in the plan, including a potential for a berm near the southern portion of the property to provide some noise mitigation for properties to the south. And these details will be finalized through the detailed engineering design of the subdivision. Uh, the city did receive a letter from an the adjoining property owner to the west earlier today, expressing concerns with the timing of the city's application and lack of consultation. Uh, as noted, staff are of the opinion that in this case, formal comments in MTO are not required as we are not directly having any access to Highway 2 within the controlled area from the 401. And all of the land use permits will still be required for the properties that are immediately abutting the MTO corridor. As well, the draft plan already includes a 14-meter block or a dedication to the MTO to ensure that the buildings meet the required 14-meter setback from the MTO road allowance. The only special provision that's required is in this area for the special M1 zone to allow for reduced lot depth. In this case, staff are satisfied it's appropriate, as we don't really know the final lot sizes yet. That will be dependent on the potential purchasers, and the city will subdivide the land through depositing reference plans to create the lots. So there'll be an appropriate zoning check done at that time. As well, all development on this parcel will be subject to site plan approval. And as noted, the city has been working with the budding landowner to the west for some time, as the servicing does need to go through their parcel. And these lands have been included in secondary planning purposes. And the city's engineering consultants have been working with the budding property owners, engineering consultants to ensure that the two draft plans of subdivision are appropriately co-designed. But the city's this plan can proceed without consideration of the abutting plan. Just the city will need to get servicing through that abutting parcel. With that, I will try to answer any questions council has.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Any questions from council? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'll now call on the applicant or the representative on behalf of the applicant. And if you can state your name and address. Thanks.
Your worship, council, Harold DeHaan, city engineer. I'm gonna use 500 Dundas Street as the address, I guess. Yeah, I'm just here just to give a little bit background. As you know, the city bought the Corlett Farm in 2019, and then about a year later bought the Elliott Farm at the corner there. Since 2020, we have been doing a integrated master plan slash draft plan of subdivision process. EA process. It's a public process. We've been in contact with all the stakeholders numerous times, including MTO, Toyota, Grand Rapids Conservation Area, Upper Thames Conservation Area, First Nations, and I'm sure, as well as the Gills, the property to the west, the Gill property there, their design team. We've had a number of meetings with them. We've shared information with them, including our design as well as our environmental reports and our survey. Yeah, I guess I just want to say that it's a big project. We're looking forward to getting it done. It's going to take a few years, and it's got some hefty dollar signs attached to it. However, you know, we've had a couple public information meetings. We've dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, and we think we can do this. And yeah, we'd like to, you know, we're glad we have a favorable report from planning. We were a little caught off guard with conditions 18 and 26 today. We do not think that those are necessary. As Eric mentioned, there's been a number of secondary studies already done in which capacity was not an issue. The county just finished their sanitary master plan, wastewater master plan last year, which did not identify any capacity issues with the system. We designed the sewers and the pump station, or working on the design to the criteria that they told us to design to. So we find that putting holding provisions on a block by block basis seems a little unnecessary. Other than that, we're happy with the report.
Thank you, Mr. DeHaan. Any questions for the city engineer from council? Seeing none, thank you so much. So I will now call on anyone who would like to speak in favor of the application to step up to the podium. Seeing none. And I'll now call on anyone who is here against the Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Hammond.
I wasn't sure. I had to consult the engineer to.
Sure.
the position.
Mr. Hammond, if you can state your name and address and thank you.
Move this down here to a reasonable height. Brad Hammond, I'm Development Officer for the City of Woodstock. My address in that position would be 500 Dundas Street. So this building. Yeah, so as Mr. DeHaan mentioned, we're quite excited for the favorable planning report. We're happy to see it here tonight after nearly 4 years of study. But I guess the reason I'm here is to voice some concerns that we have about those two clauses, clause 18 and clause 26 as proposed. The recommendations are included in the report, to my understanding, at the request of Oxford County Public Works. And these recommendations really require as Mr. DeHaan mentioned, block by block approval for water and wastewater capacity at site plan approval, or through site plan approval rather. So the 2 points that I guess I'd like to make tonight, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, which is difficult for me sometimes. The 2 points are that, these nearly identical clauses seem unnecessary given the size and scope of studies that have taken place to get us to this point for draft plan approval of subdivision. And the second point, and probably more concerning for my role, is that I believe these two recommendations specifically pose a very clear threat to the city's ability to attract and compete for new industrial investment. So as Mr. DeHaan mentioned, several studies have been completed over the last 4 years dealing with water, wastewater, the secondary plan studies, as were mentioned. We did a water servicing report, a wastewater servicing report. Both of these studies indicated no concerns when it came to capacity. Oxford County has undertaken its own water wastewater master plan in 2023, also indicated no constraints. So it's a little bit difficult for us to understand why a third or fourth check is needed to identify whether there's capacity constraints on this. Also, the county was involved in the Class EA process on this since 2020. And literally the first we heard about this capacity concern or this wish to check capacity was within the last couple of days. So to me, it seems very, very late in the day to be getting this information. I guess my point on the topic would be that, there's been all of these studies done. None of them have identified any capacity concerns or deficiencies. So it's hard to imagine what would change between now and the time that we sell the land, or we propose to sell the land rather. It seems like an unnecessary burden and an unreasonable request. We've developed a number of business parks within the city. This has never been the approach in the past, that the water and wastewater capacity checks are done at the draft plan of subdivision. So this is a new twist. The reason I'm speaking here tonight for our office is the impact that it could have on our department to sell land. Businesses fear uncertainty, and I think these two recommendations specifically create a fair bit of uncertainty in terms of businesses. And of a company searching for a new property, they're not looking for a reason to keep a community on the list. They're looking for a reason to remove a community from the short list. And this type of uncertainty, I think, would do just that. The challenge of addressing water and wastewater capacity at plan of subdivision, again, it's very late in the day. By the time a company's at plan of subdivision, or sorry, site plan approval rather, for a block by block approval, they've completed their site search for land. Hopefully they've picked Woodstock. They've completed the acquisition of the land, or they purchased it. They borrowed money. They've engaged an engineer. They've maybe engaged a construction company or consultant. They may have told their employees. They may have told their shareholders of their plans to develop in Woodstock. So it seems very odd to leave it to such a late date to finally, tell them whether or they will or will not have the water or wastewater capacity they require. I've taken a number of land reports to council, so council's, I think, quite aware of the due diligence process where companies are satisfying themselves with not only the soil conditions for the property, but also utility conditions, electrical capacity, natural gas. So, those capacity checks are done quite often by the purchaser of their land, particularly if they're going to be an unusual water user or a large water user, during their due diligence phase. So again, it seems unusual to withhold it until such a late time. I would leave you with this comment. I guess the city of Woodstock's had a very solid reputation for attracting industrial investment. We've punched far above our weight for a long time. And this investment's not only offered significant benefit to the city, but also significant benefit to the county. So we would ask that recommendation 18 and 26 be removed so it can continue to be a strong competitor when it comes to industrial attraction. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Any questions for Councillor Schadenberg? Go ahead.
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Hammond, like maybe just as a point of clarification, I know and both you and Mr. DeHaan explained it well about the water supply. But I remember a few years ago, a municipality to the north of us, just about their same population as Woodstock, was in the running for a glass manufacturing facility that was to be using exorbitant amounts of water. Would that possibly be sort of the fear as far as water usage goes to a case by case scenario to say somebody might come along that is going to be using excessive water, or are
Yeah.
the bases covered already?
That's an example. I don't, again, I think, the normal development process that I've discussed, that when recording a company, they look at water and wastewater capacity. So, Woodstock's often on that type of list, for those large investments. And, during their site selection phase, they go through that exercise long before they, picked Woodstock or picked Stratford or whoever to be the community they want to invest in. So again, those really large water users or those really large power users or natural gas users, they do that due diligence long before they ever get to site plan phase. No company wants to buy a piece of land and go through all the planning only to find out that they're not going to be able to operate there or operate at the level they want. So again, it's for those large water users, they look to satisfy themselves very early on.
Yeah, maybe not a planning matter, Mr. Hammond, but just a question in general. This property is still being used for agricultural purposes at this point in time or not?
No, that's correct. We just signed another lease with our farmer for the next year, and our practice is on this type of land, we rent it out for farming up until the point it's developed. So even once the first development goes on this property, the balance of the land that's not developed will continue to remain in agriculture right up until it's needed for something else.
Any further questions for Mr. Hammond? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to just jump back to calling on anyone against this application if you wanted to step forward. Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to the next. So the next is B23-65-8, application for consent, 634524 Ontario Inc., 607 Canterbury Street. And Mr. Gilbert, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a severance application seeking to create a vacant residential lot and retaining a lot containing single attached dwelling. The applicants indicate in application that a 4-unit residential building will be constructed on the retained lands. The applicant has also recently submitted a zone change application, which includes some relief from the required side yard setbacks. The property is designated medium density in this case. Staff recommend the application be deferred at this time to allow us to look into the severance application, zone change application a little bit more and see if we can get a development that's more in keeping with the medium density residential designation. So staff recommend deferral at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Would council like to leave it at deferral or any questions at this time, or we'll circle back to it? Okay. we'll move on to the next. If anyone's here in the audience for that, come back. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Mr. Gilbert. So the next is ZN 8-24-05, application for zone change, City of Woodstock, Allier Street. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
This is a zone change to rezone the property from M334, which is a special general industrial zone, to M345 to add an abattoir as a permitted use on the subject property. The property is within the city's industrial park on Aaliyah Street, and the property will be conditionally sold pending this zone change. An abattoir is a prohibited use in all zones in the city zoning bylaw, which is the case for a use that's either noxious or it's a very high water wastewater use. In this case, we've consulted with Oxford County Public Works, and there's no concerns with capacity or serving this proposed use. This is probably the best spot for it in a traditional industrial zoned designated area, and staff recommend that the application be approved. And if approved, it will be subject to site plan approval.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Any questions from council? Members of council? Seeing none? Thank you very much. So I will now call on the applicant or representative of the applicant. Is anyone present? Perfect. And if you could just state your name and address when you come up to the podium.
Yes, good evening. My name's Kevin Thompson. I'm here representing High Noon Investment Corporation, the prospective purchaser of the lands. My address is 189 Mill Street in Milton, Ontario. I don't really have anything to add other than we're very much looking forward to building the facility and conducting business here in Woodstock. Our company is a Canadian-owned family business headquartered in British Columbia with facilities in Western Canada as well as 2 other sites here in Ontario. Currently, our plant is located in Milton, Ontario, and we've right downtown actually in a residential area, and we far outgrown that site. So moving to Woodstock allows us to expand and bring approximately 250 jobs to the area. I don't have anything else to add, but happy to answer any questions there might be.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. So I'll now call on anyone in favor of this application to step forward. Seeing none, I will now call on anyone who would be against this application. Seeing none. Okay, we'll proceed to the next. The next one is ZN 8-24-07, application for zone change, County of Oxford, 385 and 387 Dundas Street. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
This is a zone change application affecting what's known as the Capitol Theatre site in downtown Woodstock on the other side of Dundas Street. The application for zone change seeks to rezone the property to a special C5 zone to allow for 8 stories instead of the maximum 6 stories, as well as to allow for parking on the first and second stories, and to have no commercial component on the ground floor of Dundas. Through the review of the application, it became apparent that a official plan amendment is also required due to the lack of commercial space. So staff are recommending that the application be deferred so that we can also process the official plan amendment that's required for the application.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. I personally have a question. I wasn't sure if anyone else would like to go first. with any questions? Councillor Schadenberg, go ahead.
Thanks a lot from the chair through to Mr. Gilbert. I guess through Gord Huff and others across the street from your planning department, there's been sort of a master plan in the background to try to determine what could be or what should be maybe a new defined height of buildings, whether they be on Dundas Street themselves or just on side streets or in the entrepreneurial zone. How far is that going that maybe a new sort of set of rules could be printed and approved by our council that 8 stories would be something that would be across the board recommended?
To Council's question, we're hoping to have something in front of you this fall for that.
So through to you, Mr. Gilbert, kind of along the same lines, I guess my question first and foremost is that the BIA in the city of Woodstock did write a letter. I know you're technically not the applicant, but I was curious if that they were advocating for commercial on the bottom. So I just didn't know if you had any feedback, if that was taken into consideration, or if that's something that through this deferral process that they'll be looking at.
I don't have much information about that. I know Rebecca has the letter and is looking at it. I know that the amenity space is needed for the tenants of the building. And the idea was to make it look like an office space from the street, because it would be the common rooms, amenity rooms for the tenants with essentially a false facade, but I'll let her speak to that when the application comes back.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Gilbert. Really, it's more about the image that's on the screen right now. I just want to be clear, that's not what is being proposed, the way the building is showing, because right now it shows that it's over top of, Delight's Bakery and a few of the neighbors, but it's really not. It's really in that footprint. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, the perspective's misleading.
yeah, it is. So just more for those watching at home as well. It is in that footprint. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Still getting used to these new bikes. So again, just one more question, which maybe it would be back to when the applicant comes before council, because I know it's a deferral, but I was also curious along the lines of, say, in the fall, if Woodstock City Council approved 9 or 10 stories all throughout the downtown for height targets. I'm just still curious that it sounds like from what I read, they're actually providing more parking spaces than required in this application. I want to say that they've kind of gone above and beyond, which is ironic because it is in the downtown. So just I'm trying to think of what my question is here, but I just wondered if you had any insight if they would consider going to 9 stories, again, just to include that commercial and then those 2 stories of parking. And further to that, my understanding is that to access the parking for this building will be through the alleys, not off of Dundas, correct?
To your questions, yes, the access will be from the city-owned alley in the rear. Although the parking isn't required by the zoning, the proponents identified that, to market the building because it's a mix of affordable and market rents. They'll have to provide some parking to attract some of the tenants for the market rent units. So they needed to provide some parking, and the thought was that the 32 spaces would be roughly the amount of market units that'd be in the building.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Gilbert again. Is it a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms? I don't recall reading that anywhere. What, is there a breakdown somewhere? I don't recall seeing that. Oh, my eyes are too, I can't see that then.
I don't have that breakdown, but I'll bring it
Yeah.
back for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any further questions? Councillor Wismer Van Meer.
Through the chair to Mr. Gilbert, that shouldn't be that hard to say. The parking is at this draft to be on the main levels. If that is, chosen to be commercial, or if that's what's required to go into there, what does parking look like? Is it going to have to go down under? Like what happens in that aspect if that's where the parking is going to be allotted?
So the current proposal is that parking at the ground floor and then one level above. There's no indication to go underground due to the potential contamination of the site. They want to minimize the disturbance of that. So at this point, it's just at grade or ground floor and then the one level above that.
Okay, Counselor Schadenberg, go ahead.
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Gilbert. I would understand that the county of Oxford, when it's all said and done, will likely not be the owner of this building.
Yes, I think typically we assemble the sites and have the planning approvals and then market them through a request for proposals process. Where essentially we will give the land as a contribution to a proponent. And they give us we rank their proposals to determine the best proposal, the best number of affordable units, and the best performer. And then we enter into an agreement to secure those benefits for 25 years.
So my last question would be, and this just came top of mind. So say again, in the fall, you come back to Woodstock City Council to change the height targets for the downtown. If we find that this application proceeds with no commercial on the bottom and parking, and then we find in the fall that that's not something that we hope is set in stone for future development in the downtown, would we be able to kind of make modifications to the zoning along with changing the height densities? I'm just concerned if this sets a precedent for other growth, but obviously I think we all have discussed about higher densities in the downtown.
So any future development that didn't have commercial on the main floor, we need to come before you for relief of that provision. So I think that's covered off that way.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. So if anybody wanted to speak on this application, it is deferred, so it's going to come back to us at a later date, just to let everybody know in the gallery. And we will go to the next. B 24-09-8, A 24-04-8, application for consent and minor variance, Zachary Jankovic, pardon me if I've said that wrong, 306 Queen Street. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
This is an application for consent and minor variance to create a new vacant residential lot and retaining lot with a converted dwelling. A duplex is proposed and lot to be severed. There's relief sought from the minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, minimum lot depth, rear yard depth for the lot to be retained, and front yard depth for the lot to be retained. Staff recommended this application be deferred so that we can have discussions with the applicant about some alternate proposals or alternate dwelling type, or reconfigure the severance so that the extent of relief required is not so great. So at this point, staff recommend deferral of the applications.
Is everyone comfortable with the deferral? Any questions? Okay, so that'll be deferred. If anyone is here to speak on that, it'll come back to council another time to speak to this application. So that concludes tonight's meeting. A decision on these items will be made at the council meeting on Thursday, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.